It does make me wonder, though, how did you, because you mentioned you originally had a different role within the company, how did you end up at JetBrains in the first place? Did you just apply it, or did someone ask you, or how does it work?
This is always my favorite story to tell.
Then that's perfect.
So the way that I ended up in this campus ambassador position was JetBrains, I suppose in a time before GDPR, sent out an email blast to all students at the university saying, JetBrains needs your help, we're looking for a campus ambassador.
Oh, okay.
And I deleted that email immediately.
Welcome to the second episode of Career Path. Today I'm here with Sebastian Aigner, developer advocate for Kotlin and Kotlin JS at JetBrains. He was born in 1996 in Munich, Germany, and was raised there again. He studied a Bachelor of Science in Informatics, or Computer Science, others might say, at the Technical University Munich, where he graduated in 2019. He first joined JetBrains in 2018 as an education ambassador and moved to his current position of developer advocate for Kotlin and Kotlin JS in 2019. He produces many videos on the official Kotlin YouTube channel and hosts the Talking Kotlin podcast. Welcome, Sebastian. Very nice that you came around. I'm very happy to have you.
It's nice to be here.
Yeah, cool. So I guess let's start from the very beginning before we move to your current occupation, which I personally find very interesting. So what were your first contacts with coding?
So this is actually a really interesting question. When I think I started when I was maybe like 11 or something. I think I got influenced by some of like the 80s movies like War Games and stuff. I'm not sure if you've seen that one.
Yeah.
That really conjured up this image of like the computer whiz. And I think that may have inspired me a bit as well. And one of the great things was that my dad at the time really, like, he recognized this, and he was like, oh, if you have like some interest in there, if you have some passion. He has nothing to do with like computers at all. Like he does accounting, investment planning, that kind of stuff. But he went out of his way to ask around at work and find people who could help him find some kind of materials for me to get started. And so one day he came back with like a self-burned CD, which had a basic interpreter on it, like a free basic interpreter. And I just kind of sat down with like a huge stack of papers and just started like programming away. Again, nothing fancy. Go sub, so like an actual subroutine function call was already like, that was kind of complicated. But you know, just kind of those were really the first steps, I think.
Nice. That is nice that your dad, realized that you have an interest in this, which I guess is partially a reason why you are where you now, I guess.
I certainly think so as well.
Nice. We heard what your current position is, and probably that's where some people even know you from the public relations from JetBrains. What then were your first personal contact points with Kotlin as a language?
So it was kind of an interesting story again, because I was really big on Java throughout my whole like university life. I was this kind of person who thought, I'm not gonna write a bash script if I can write like a 20-line Java program and compile that one out. Just because, well, I was productive with the language, I understood what was going on, and I didn't really see the need for something else. But then, through sheer coincidence, I ended up in a couple of courses where we were building mobile apps for iOS, and I did Swift for much longer than I initially thought. I thought it was just going to be one course, which ended up with me the first doing that course, then helping teach that course and mentor other students in the course. And after that, after really kind of having embraced a language for a while that has modern paradigms, I couldn't really go back to Java anymore afterwards. I was really in this situation where I was like, I have knowledge about the JVM ecosystem. I enjoy the JVM ecosystem, but I kind of want a different language. And so I sat down and I browsed the web for a while at the time and looked for some kind of language that I could go to next after Java. And I didn't even, at the time, I actually did not have the strict requirement that it would be on the JVM.
I see.
I'm sorry.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. I just wondered then. So I guess since you then discovered Kotlin and it was also possible to run it on JVM, this was like a nice match, I guess.
Oh yeah. So that was kind of then the match made in heaven. But at first I looked at a bunch of different languages. I looked at Dart in the beginning. So that was in a time before Flutter, just as a language that targeted multiple platforms with a bunch of modern paradigms. I had to look at Haxe, which again also has some of these paradigms. And then I found Kotlin through sheer coincidence, and I saw that it's made by this company whose products I've been using since I started studying, which was like, check mark.
Yeah.
It runs on the JVM, check mark. And I was like, hey, this looks really modern. I feel like I can even translate some of the skills I have from Swift into this. I was like, check mark.
Nice.
And it really did feel like falling in love and like
the stars align.
Yeah, like it was truly. I don't say this lightly. I think there's maybe 2 or 3 technologies out there where I say this, but Kotlin was really love at first sight for me with a technology where I'm like, this is something I can be productive with, and that I can build cool things quickly as well.
I totally share this, honestly, because I have a similar story also coming from Java and then looking at Scala for a bit, and then Kotlin, I don't know, found somewhere and was like, oh, this is better than the other 2 combined. If there is a distinct thing that made you fall in love with Kotlin in air quotes, what would it be?
So, coming from like a couple of other languages beforehand, it just really felt like things made sense. Like things clicked together in a good way. It wasn't just an amalgamation of features that are all just kind of glued together in a mess, but it was like a cohesive thing where when you look at it, you're like, well, if I can do that, I can probably do this.
Like a master plan of sorts.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
And you can just, if you have an understanding of like the first component, and you're like, well, but what if I do it here as well, and it just works, right? This kind of, the fact that you can explore the language oftentimes very organically as well, really helped. And then of course the fact that you pull a piece of knowledge you already have from here and from here, and you're like, oh, it's the same. They're the same concepts. So you just have this. I have this theory where like every time you hit like a little hiccup, it's like a speed bump that slows you down. But if there's no speed bumps, like you don't, like your speed doesn't rise linearly, it rises like exponentially.
Yeah.
And that's the feeling I had when I first started with Kotlin.
Yeah, I think I also have to say that the language feels like very well thought out. Like the components like come together very nicely. Yeah. So yeah, I see what you mean. Then though, I do want to ask, is there any feature that if Kotlin would still be in the early design stage again, that you would like to be different from how it works nowadays? Or maybe a feature that you would personally like to see in the future?
I think the classic example that a lot of people mention in this context is interface delegation and companion objects. Those are like the 2 big things that people always mention. I have to admit that at least with companion objects, I don't have as strong of an opinion as many people in the community.
Yeah.
But I have to admit that I feel like we're currently already in a position with Kotlin where it's very easy to write pragmatic code. There are some fancy concepts that maybe you could still introduce, but it's always this trade-off of like, there are features that I would want, certainly, and that started from when I first saw Kotlin. I had just finished a course in OCaml.
Okay.
And it was like, well, where's my pipe operator? I want to pipe things everywhere now, right? But then after a while, you realize, well, maybe this isn't exactly the pragmatic approach, or maybe it doesn't fit so well with all the other building blocks. I think it would be really cool to see some way of doing partial function application.
I see.
As a little bit more convenient thing, but again, it's a personal thing, and I'm not sure if it gives people a huge productivity boost.
It's a nice feature that more functional languages have.
But from the roadmap, or from what people are thinking about, multiple receivers, or an idea of decorators in some way, that seems like a pretty neat expansion for the language.
Yeah, I think that's great. That sounds good. Let's move. Since we heard it in the intro, your current role is a developer advocate. This is, when I first heard it the first time, a bit of a mysterious sounding title, I have to say. That made me wonder, how did you start considering this job of developer advocate for yourself, since, well, it is not the most common one?
It's kind of interesting. I don't think my path of ending up there is probably the classic path that a developer advocate usually takes.
I see.
Because if you don't tell any of my colleagues, but if you look at the median age of the developer advocates, I'm like 20 years younger.
yeah, certainly.
Yeah. So typically, as a developer advocate, you kind of act as a stand-in for the community, right? Which means, on the one hand, you try to gain a deep understanding of the technology you're advocating for. You try to apply it yourself, but you also communicate a lot with the community. And so I enjoyed, especially during university, working a lot in kind of the teaching area, where it was just bringing people knowledge and seeing people take that knowledge, and again, like having this multiplying effect of you teach a class something and then you have 30 people running and doing amazing things with that.
It's a nice feeling.
Yeah, it really is a nice feeling. And that's kind of where I first thought about all of this. I started as this campus ambassador first for JetBrains, where I already did events, we did courses for people. So it was like a mini advocate in the beginning, and then at some point when I realized this is something that I also want to do full time, I took this path, and thankfully with the help of the people at JetBrains, I now get to do this full time.
Nice, yeah, that's cool. That does make me wonder, how did you, because you mentioned you originally had a different role within the company, how did you end up at JetBrains in the first place? Just applied, or did someone ask you, or how does it work?
This is always my favorite story to tell.
Then that's perfect.
So JetBrains was looking for a campus ambassador.
What is that to begin with? Sorry.
So the campus ambassador is a person who essentially is the presence of JetBrains at the university. So they help bring the products to professors. So they kind of maybe lobby a little bit and tell them like, hey, these are the cool things on how your students can profit if you use our free and open source community tools. But it also encompasses things like doing meetups, coordinating with user groups, bringing maybe companies or speakers to the actual campus, and providing just a point of contact for students.
Nice.
So that's kind of the main point. And so the way that I ended up in this campus ambassador position was JetBrains, I suppose in a time before GDPR, sent out an email blast to all students at the university saying, JetBrains needs your help, we're looking for a campus ambassador.
Oh, okay. And
I deleted that email immediately. Because it's an email from a company whose products I use, like a company needs your help, it's gonna be a survey, delete.
Oh really, I see.
And so yeah. And 2 days later, I get a message on Telegram from a friend. And they're like, have you seen this email from JetBrains? I'm like, I've seen there was an email from JetBrains, but I deleted it. And they were like, yeah, maybe you should read it, because that seems like a job that like perfectly fits like what you want to do and the kind of like the focus and passion that you have. And I fished it like out of my email trash, and I'm like, oh. So I put my homework to the side and I spent 6 hours revising my CV because I didn't have an up-to-date one. Yeah. And I procrastinated everything else, and I sent like the whole package, motivational letter and everything in the classical sense, sent it over there. I was workshopping the CV in parallel with a couple of people because I'm like, does this design work? What do you think about the content, the formulations? And then I shut it off. Then a bit of radio silence, an interview in the Munich office, and then I ended up as the campus ambassador.
Nice. That's a nice story. Good that your friend reminded you, right? Otherwise, maybe we wouldn't be sitting here.
It's pure luck at this
Butterfly
point.
effect
Yeah,
or whatever?
exactly. Yeah, it was by the skin of my teeth that it would have gone completely different.
Interesting. Yeah, that's always the best stories. Let's move to your current role, since I guess that's also what you're obviously what you're most concerned with day to day. So I guess it's a bit of a hard question to answer, but maybe you can give us a quick rundown. What are your main tasks as the developer advocate?
I think with developer advocacy, that is the hardest thing to nail down, really, because we are this strange amalgamation of marketing, sales, community support, QA, hopefully at least in part also developer or engineer, and it kind of combines all of this. But at the core, I would say it really boils down to being the connecting link between the company and the community. And that is, of course, a two-way link. So that means we give talks, create materials so that people feel more empowered with our technologies and so that they can build interesting things, hopefully productively, both with our programming language and our IDEs. And it also goes the other way around, which is we try to collect feedback. We try to have a rapport with the people and check in with them. So when someone has like a weird issue or something, or they have problems because something they feel isn't being prioritized right, and they just want another set of eyes or something like that, they're probably gonna come to us.
Nice.
And the other big thing then, of course, is specifically with Kotlin, for example, we're also just trying to be the face of the technology. So ideally, if someone thinks Kotlin, they think the 3 or 4 people that we have in our team. And when they think Kotlin JS, then hopefully they think Sebastian.
Yeah, I certainly do.
Yeah, so then I've done my job well, at least in that regard.
Nice. You mentioned it already then. So do you have many contacts with the Kotlin core developers or language designers or whatever after developers that use Kotlin day to day told you about some sort of feedback?
So we really try to have some kind of feedback loop there, certainly. We also work together with our product managers, for example. We sit in on customer interviews or on user interviews, and sometimes try to poke some more technical holes into some of the questions that people have. We certainly, so I'm involved in all the stand-ups that we have in for example, the Kotlin JS team. I try to give my input on some of the technical decisions as well. This is always, of course, a bit of a balance, because if you're not a full-time engineer, you have to accept that there are people who think literally, like if you work 20% with the technology, there's people who work 5 times as much with it. They might have some other considerations. Yeah. But it's generally kind of bringing this back and forth, and also getting an intuitive feeling of kind of where the tide is going, what people are telling you, and also figuring out things like why people maybe aren't even trying things in the first place. They're all parts that we try to at least kind of address. Yeah, so that's, I think, what you mentioned in the beginning, so be a bit the connecting link between the things, because right, the engineers can have no time or no interest maybe also to get this feedback loop going. So I think then, yeah, that's where you come in. And then, of course, it's also trying to figure out when something new comes out, it's how can we communicate this back to the community. Writing tutorials, updating tutorials, and then, yeah, on a broader scale, also just educational content about Kotlin, the language itself, so that people who start for the first time have an easier time, learn more about the technology, can be more productive. Nice, nice. Sounds very interesting, I have to say. What do you then typically spend most of your time on out of all of these activities? Because it's quite a lot of variety, I guess. Can you pinpoint it or not really? I think that's very seasonal. Okay. Like it really depends on what, like, between the release season and the like some other times. I think currently the main thing I spend my time with, or at least the largest chunk, is the content that we create for the YouTube channel. Right. because video editing and video creation just takes a lot of time.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you would know all about it. But now you also have to imagine that, when there's like 6 or 7 other people involved, from your first draft of the script that goes through multiple iterations, you have people checking that message, you have people checking whether it's technically correct. Then you have to record that, you have to post-process it, you have to work with all the screencasts somehow, sync all of that up. And while I think there's still some optimizations that I can make in the process, like there's just a hard limit on how fast these things can go.
Definitely, yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, you are a corporation or whatever, so you also, it has to meet a certain quality standard, right?
Yeah.
So that's always good.
But this is also something that I think that we're still in the process of figuring out. So we've been creating screencasts and such for a long time, but I think especially embracing a more modern brand of screencasts, which focuses a bit more on personality as well, which has more faces, more design elements, all of these things. It takes time to figure that out, to come up with a process, and I think we're still also a little bit still learning this.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I mean, you're not a production company from the core, so that makes sense.
Yeah, but to be fair, we are, at least in the Kotlin team, all of our videos are done completely in-house. So
nice. That's good.
Yeah.
Nice. I mean, they do look professional. I cannot say anyhow else.
Huge shout out to our video team. I would be nothing without them. I'll be very honest.
Yeah, the graphics specifically are chef's kiss. I do want to ask then though, what would you consider your favorite part of your role that you personally enjoy the most?
Interestingly enough, this is also a really tough question. And I'm gonna just kind of skate around it and say,
go ahead.
It's the variety. That's the part that I enjoy the most, because it's literally,
very fair answer.
Yeah, it's, if you kind of don't feel like doing one thing, there's like 5 completely different topics that you could currently work on that are just as important or might be just as interesting. I personally really enjoy creating videos, especially if they are from like my personal series. So I do like the Kotlin standard library, Safari, this kind of stuff. And I have a lot of ideas on also other more strange videos that I maybe want to create. I just have to figure out how I'm gonna do that exactly.
Maybe personal spin-off.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but on the other hand, we still want to really grow like the community.
Yeah,
For example, I've recently, so I'm not sure if by the time the video or this interview will come out, whether that's already published, but I recently created our first TikTok video for our JetBrains brand marketing. Now, I have absolutely nothing to do with TikTok.
We're a bit too old, I think, both of us.
Yeah,
like
slightly, it's slightly past my generation, but if there's one thing that's really fun, it's like looking at videos and like emulating their style. Like if you've seen like 50 TikTok videos that are not specifically dance videos, you kind of get an idea of like what people expect from the platform. And emulating this and making it fun and working with props as well, that's something that's really cool. So there's definitely a passion for video in there.
Nice. I see actually your point quite well, because I did also look a bit into like what is there in terms of the content that I create on TikTok, and it's very sparse, because I mean it maybe doesn't lend itself too nicely to it, but then you make a very good point. It's also about the delivery and like that it hits the nerve of what the audience expects on the platform specifically. So nice. That sounds very interesting.
And yeah, it's also just this constant process of like reflecting and kind of going back. So I think I was probably one of the first people at JetBrains who really wanted to have background music in their videos. And you'll find this in all of the videos that I am in. Sometimes even when they are out of a series from someone else, you'll find that my video has background music in it, because the video editors already know that is my default request. So I'll always have some lo-fi beats going on in the background.
You will hear this under this video as well then.
Exactly, because yeah.
No, I agree.
Yeah, it's just, it adds a little bit of personality, and
certainly,
I think that it's just fun.
I totally agree. something I did wonder about coming back to your role. Well, not coming back. We've been there all the time. But some other programming languages and large frameworks also have like official developer advocate roles, right? That made me wonder: do you have ever contact with others, like exchanging ideas or something, or not really?
We chat a bunch with people from the Spring framework, for example. Especially the folks who do like server-side promotion as well. I do a little bit of like Ktor and this kind of stuff on the side, but it's not my main focus. But yeah, so for example, we're talking with Spring regularly. Kotlin is really big on Android, so we also obviously have like a red telephone which we can pick up, and we will talk to the Google developer advocates. And obviously, since we as JetBrains are a technology company anyway, you'll find us have Slack channels with like Gradle people or people just who build the technologies that we build tools for. So yeah, there's definitely an exchange happening, and I don't think we could provide some of the things as well as we do.
Yeah, also because then people that do use Kotlin use it probably via some of these channels, right? They use it via Spring, or, you get what I'm saying? Or have to use Gradle or want to use or whatever.
Certainly.
Yeah. Nice. Something I also personally wondered about is how do you stay like up to date with Kotlin's development, right? I wondered, since you do, I presume, not work on large-scale applications on a daily basis, at least as a developer advocate, do you do something special, or is the fact that you're the closest to the source one can get when it comes to Kotlin as a programming language enough?
You'll have to specify what you mean by stay up to date with Kotlin.
I mean, so
I read the release notes.
No. So what I'm trying to say is, if some problems, I think that you will have an easier time seeing when using them in like a large, some things that come with scale, for instance, right? Do you do something specifically to, or is it not really required to begin with?
It's kind of an interesting question, because I would actually argue it's kind of the opposite way around.
Okay.
I think one of the things we need to focus on more is the experience for people who just start and have their first Hello World program.
Yeah, fair enough.
But one of the things, so we at JetBrains really believe in dog fooding, right? IntelliJ IDEA, which is a code base that's been growing for 20 years, now has large parts of it written in Kotlin. And of course, any kind of performance regressions or other issues that come with scale, our developers notice there, and they'll obviously communicate this internally. JetBrains Space, one of our latest projects for team management, which includes everything from chats to Git hosting to all the other fancy features you might want to have as a developing team. That is written completely in Kotlin, including the mobile applications with Kotlin multi-platform, including the web application using Kotlin multi-platform and Kotlin JS. So again, on the topic of scale, that's kind of where we're getting some of the flow back. And these are also, for example, now that we've been rewriting the Kotlin compiler or the Kotlin JS compiler specifically to the IR backend, these are always the things that the team tests against. What I do a lot though, and you'll find that if you open my laptop and you go to like File, New Project, it'll suggest Untitled 136.
You tinker around.
Yes, because I go through the workflow that users who start using Kotlin, I go through that multiple times a day. First of all, just because I try little things in isolation, but also just because I believe we still need to focus on making sure that it's easy for people to get started.
Yeah.
And
it's also a bit more, the friction is probably higher, right, than with the expert.
Yeah, it's like this funnel, right? If you have people who already have buy-in in the technology, they are much more resilient when it comes to frustration. Obviously, you need to support them, and they are the people who really test like every little thing of your technology. But the classic problem is if someone hits an issue early on and something is broken, they're just not going to tell you. They're going to pick another technology. Yeah,
that's a fair point. That's probably what you then have to get rid of.
And I think this is also a little bit maybe the quote-unquote QA aspect. So I think on average, I probably log like 5 or 6 issues a day.
I would have not thought that.
Not specifically for Kotlin necessarily, but across all the products that we use, right? From our team tools to issue tracking to IntelliJ, when you have something that feels like a point of friction, it sometimes needs a bit of motivation for yourself, because you're like, well, I just want to do this. I don't really care about this right now. But if you take the time and you write a report and you'll tell people and you'll end up in a discussion, you might end up making the life easier for everyone, which is always cool and also kind of rewarding.
Yeah, and it might come back to you, right? Then if they do fix it and it makes your life easier because you gained another person that uses the technology. Yeah, that's a very good answer to the question, I have to say. Right, coming to the last question. I have the feeling that's a bit a tough one for you to answer. I'll try anyways. What was your personal favorite announcement at the recent Premiere Online event?
Yeah, I'm biased. So.
Wow.
I mean, how cool is WebAssembly? I mean, that's just cool.
It is.
I'm very excited. I'm also just. It's amazing seeing all these things just kind of continue to evolve. Everything from the compiler itself to that building a new foundation for the IDE plugin, to just seeing the numbers of things being faster. I would say the overall thing, it just gives me this positive outlook of saying like, hey,
we're on a good trajectory.
Yeah, exactly. It's just getting better.
Nice.
And I think that's probably, so it's a little bit skirting the question, cheating a little bit, because it's not one thing, but just, I would say the overall trajectory, that's the big thing for me.
If that is the honest answer, I'm very happy with it, so that's good. Right, that were all my questions. So I would ask you some very light-hearted questions that I would ask you to respond to with, I don't know, a single sentence or even a word, if possible. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Cool. Then let's hit the road. What is your favorite programming language or languages next to Kotlin?
TypeScript is pretty great.
Nice. Music for coding or not?
Lo-fi only. No lyrics.
I share that feeling. What would you consider your biggest hobby or hobbies?
Probably electronics.
Yeah, that's a nice one. Something I personally wondered is the cool looking room from where the videos are recorded, right? The backdrop with the trinkets and stuff. Is it at your home or at the JetBrains office in Munich?
That's in my home.
Nice.
I redecorated my whole flat just for the YouTube videos.
It looks really nice, really. Like it, I like it. Cool. What is your favorite cuisine of food, whatever, if you can pinpoint it?
Japanese is really great, but Asian in general, there's so many amazing flavors.
Nice. Do you have an all-time favorite, like computer or video game, or genre maybe?
I grew up playing Crazy Machines.
Oh yes, that I played a lot as well.
I think that's actually a German game originally as well.
It could well be.
Yeah. I think that would be my all-time favorite.
It's a very nice one. I did play that a lot as well. Nice. Do you have a favorite travel destination?
No.
No, fair enough. And the last one, what's a technology that you'd like to pick up if you'd find the time? Let's say you have unlimited time.
I think Zig is a really interesting. I recently heard a podcast, so I'm a little bit biased, but
it's recency bias.
Yeah, exactly. But Zig seems like something that's really cool. Apart from that, I'd like to just brush up on some of the math again that I've been doing in university, and I can feel it going away, and I feel like it might still be useful for a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair, that's good points. Very final thing I always like to do is that I like to ask the guest if they could give some of their personal, like, most important advice or whatever to some group within tech.
Yeah. Specifying a group is I think the hardest part here, but it doesn't really matter on whether you are starting out or you're an expert. I think the big thing is you have to figure out ways to keep having fun in what you do. I think that's the only way to long-term stay motivated with anything. That's really the core thing. If you enjoy what you do, that doesn't mean that you always have to do it, but it means that you need to make time to work on things that you enjoy. I think that's how you stay on top and how you stay motivated and also keep this process of lifelong learning.
Very nice. I think that's a great final word. I can only agree with that. Right, that was this interview of Career Path. I'm very thankful that you came around. I had a lot of fun. It was nice chatting with you. And for the audience at home, if you enjoyed this interview, consider subscribing to the channel and check out the other episodes of this series with other interesting people. Thanks a lot, Sebastian, for coming around. And
it was my pleasure.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.